My name is Elena Cross. I'm 33 years old. 5 years after my family told their entire congregation I had run off and abandoned them, my brother found my front porch. It was a Thursday in October. I was slicing strawberries for my daughter's snack when the knock came. I opened the door, and there stood Micah, my younger brother, holding his phone like it was the only solid thing left in his hand. He said my name. Then his eyes moved past my shoulder, and every bit of color drained out of his face. He stumbled back down my porch steps without finishing his sentence. Mom, you need to see this. She never told us. He couldn't get the rest of it out. What my mother did with that phone call, and what I finally did 3 weeks later, standing in front of 200 people who believed her version of me, is the story I'm about to tell you. Welcome back to Hearthly Stories, where quiet people finally stop apologizing for the families that use them. If stories about boundaries and starting over speak to you, drop a comment and subscribe. There's a house on a quiet Portland street with a front door the color of faded denim. I painted it myself, 3 coats. The week we moved in, the last coat went on the same day I stopped apologizing for existing without my family's permission. Inside lives a 4-year-old named Ren, who believes waffles are a personal achievement. I work long shifts as a labor and delivery nurse, 12 hours, most days, 16 on the bad ones. In 5 years, no one from Springfield, Missouri had crossed that doorframe. That wasn't an accident. It also wasn't the story my family told about it. They said I disappeared. That word is passive. Fog disappears. Car keys disappear. It's a word built to erase whoever did the erasing. What actually happened is I stopped sending money home, and my family stopped being able to see me. The money is where this starts. It isn't where it ends. It began 11 years ago, at my college graduation dinner, at my mother's kitchen table. I was the first in my family to finish a degree, paid for with loans and years of double shifts. My mother Diane threw a dinner. My father, Walter, said grace. My brother Micah, 17 then, ate most of the cake. For 2 hours I was the pride of that kitchen. Remember that feeling, because my mother certainly did. After the plates were cleared, she slid an envelope across the table. My name on the front in her careful handwriting. I thought it was a card. It was empty. For the house, she said, patting my hand. You're the one who made it out. Nobody blinked. I laughed a little, because I thought I understood. One envelope, one favor. I filled it from my first paycheck and mailed it back. The next month, another envelope arrived, and the next, nobody asked out loud again. The asking had already happened once, dressed up as pride. That envelope was never a one-time gift. It was a subscription, written in a language I'd been raised to call love. By year 2, we'd switched to bank transfers. $1,500 most months, $2,200 in the bad ones. A new furnace, my father's transmission. A roof after a hailstorm which I paid for and felt proud of. A daughter keeping the rain off her parents' heads from 2 states away. My brother's used car, Christmas envelopes stacked on top of the regular ones. Meanwhile, I picked up every holiday shift for 5 straight years, because holidays paid double. My coworkers thought I was saving for something. I was. I just couldn't have told you what. I kept a running total in a notebook, not because I ever wanted it back, but because numbers were the one thing in that house that never lied. By year 5, the total had 6 figures behind it. I'll tell you the number later. I've said it out loud exactly once in my life. One more thing about that roof. In a photo my brother texted me one Thanksgiving. A blue tarp was still stapled to the roofline, a full year after the storm. I told myself contractors were slow. Telling myself things was cheaper than asking my mother questions. The hospital's east entrance had a rotting ramp, and the contractor who rebuilt it was named Jonas Rivera. 29 then, sawdust always in his hair. He asked me to breakfast since dinner was the middle of my night. For 2 years he packed my lunches and labeled them by shift. When he proposed, there was no ring, just a brass key tied to twine, the key to a fixer-upper with a porch he swore we'd drink coffee on until we were 90. I took him to Springfield exactly once. My mother asked what he made an hour before she asked his last name. On the drive home he said, "Your mom really loves numbers." He had no idea how right he was. That night while he slept, my phone lit up. My mother, "He seems steady, honey. Also, small loan this month? Don't tell your father. I paid it. For years I always paid it." That winter, flu season gutted my unit. I came off a 16-hour shift, slept through an alarm for the first time in my adult life, and woke up on the 4th of the month. The transfer had gone out 2 days late. The phone rang at 7 the next morning. My mother didn't yell. Yelling I could have fought. Her voice was flat and clean, like a bill. The mortgage had bounced. She'd had to move money around in front of my father, which was humiliating. Then she said the sentence I've carried in my chest for 4 years, the one this whole story runs on. "You don't get to be tired. You're the one who made it." I apologized twice. She accepted once. I told her I'd set up an automatic transfer so it could never happen again, and she said that would be best. We hung up like a bank and a customer. I was 28, apologizing for sleeping after keeping strangers alive all night. It took a catastrophe to make me put the phone down. It was a Tuesday when the charge nurse came to find me, and I knew before she spoke. A scaffold on a downtown job. A safety cable that paperwork said was fine. Jonas Rivera, 32, was gone before the ambulance cleared the second light. His crew carried him at the funeral. My family did not come. 90 minutes was called too far to drive on short notice. 4 days later, my mother texted, "So sorry about everything, honey. Will this month's transfer still go out okay?" I read it standing in Jonas's closet, holding a flannel shirt that still smelled like cut lumber. I sent the money on time. Grief makes you obedient before it makes you anything else. 2 weeks later, I fainted at the nurse's station. 2 pink lines came up like a sunrise I had no idea what to do with. The ultrasound said 16 weeks. I was 5 months from seeing someone's mother, and one phone call from being no one's daughter. I just didn't know that part yet. I planned the call the way I plan a medication pass. In the shower, I rehearsed it. Mom, Jonas died. Mom, I'm pregnant. Mom, I have to stop sending money and keep every dollar for the baby. In what order do you hand your mother a death, a grandchild, and a boundary? I led with the boundary. She answered on the second ring. I said, Mom, I have to stop sending money. That's as far as I got. Ungrateful. After everything. So this is who you are now. Then a dial tone, flat as a heart monitor with nothing left to say. I called back twice. Voicemail. I sat on the room floor and felt the words I never got to say. Jonas's name, the baby, the boundary, settle back into my chest like swallowed glass. I tried my father. Dad, please. Something's happened. Walter Cross, who once drove 3 hours for my choir's concert, said quietly, "Don't upset your mother. Not what happened. Not are you okay." Every road into that family ran through my mother, and she had closed the road. 700 miles away, my mother started telling a story. It just wasn't mine. My Aunt Paulette posted on Facebook about children who forget the people who raised them. At Cop X Alpha, someone asked where I'd gone. My mother looked at her shoes, let the silence sour, and said, "We don't really know anymore," dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Every word of that is technically true. She didn't know because she'd hung up before knowing was possible. By the next coffee hour, someone was using the word disappeared, and my mother didn't correct her. A thing left uncorrected in a small church becomes scripture by Advent. She never lied. She just declined, again and again, to tell the truth, and wept at the right moments, and let 200 people write the story for her. I knew none of this. I was building a life 400 miles south with the sound off. I assembled a crib alone with a tutorial playing on a paint bucket. The money that used to leave my account became a car seat, and a down payment, and a cushion for the weeks I wouldn't work. I moved into my house 8 months pregnant and painted the door blue before I'd even unpacked the kitchen. In my 8th month, I wrote one letter, by hand, to my grandmother Ruth, my father's mother, 80 years old, the only person who preferred a hard truth to a smooth story. I gave her everything. Jonas, the baby, the phone call, my new address. Then I watched the mailbox stay empty for weeks and told myself the letter got lost because the other possibility was too heavy to pick up. Ren Rivera Cross arrived in March, 3 weeks early, entirely unbothered by any of it. I want to tell you something about myself. On my unit, I was famous for dry eyes, 10 years of codes, and last breaths, always the calm one. I cried holding my daughter, not gently, because the two people who should have been pacing that waiting room didn't even know she existed. Because he was gone, one because she'd hung up the phone. We named her Ren. Jonas had said the name once on a porch he never got to buy, trying names out loud like paint colors. When he landed on that one, he grinned and said, "Her someday." So it was always hers. 4 years of peace, compressed like a shift handoff. You can breathe shockingly well once you stop funding a second household. Every December, I sent one card north to my grandmother. A school photo, my return address, no demands. I never knew if she read them or burned them. I thought the story was over. Then, on a Thursday in October, somebody knocked on the blue door. There was a rumor back home that I'd fallen in with drugs. Another that a controlling boyfriend had cut me off from everyone. My mother presided over every version the same way, declining to confirm, declining to deny, glowing faintly with martyrdom. The story cost her nothing and paid her weekly until my grandmother Ruth caught pneumonia that spring. Hospitalized twice, home with an oxygen line, and a whole new relationship with her own patients. At a Sunday dinner, in front of witnesses, Ruth said it plainly, "Bring me Elena, or bring me a phone. I am not dying politely in a house full of people who lie for sport." My brother says a fork actually stopped in midair. Within a week, Micah, 27 then, was handed a slip of paper with my address in our mother's tidy hand. He never asked how she got it. I should have asked Elle, he told me later at my kitchen table. Hold on to that. It matters more than he knew. He drove 11 hours with the radio off and knocked on a Thursday, which brings us back to the strawberries. I stood with my hand on the latch for 3 seconds. I've timed worse decisions during a code. I could let him knock at an empty-sounding house. I could crack the door 6 inches and give him nothing. Or I could stop conducting my life through gaps in doorways. I opened it all the way. "Hi, Micah," I said, and watched 4 years hit my brother in the face. That's the exact moment I heard bare feet on hardwood behind me. "Mommy, who is it?" He saw a girl 4 years old, our grandmother Ruth's exact eyes reprinted at 3 feet tall, then past her, down the hall. Jonas's photo with the funeral ribbon, the ultrasound in its frame. A snapshot of me, 8 months pregnant, alone. I watched my brother do the math nobody had ever let him see. He went white, back down my steps, phone already at his ear. "Mom, you need to see this. She never told us." Then nothing, because there was no end to that sentence that wasn't an accusation. And he was only just realizing of whom. He sat on my porch steps and cried into his hands. I brought him inside. He sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours and asked the first real question any Cross had ever asked me. "How did he die, Elena?" And he listened to every word. At the door, leaving, he set down a cream envelope. Inside, a church invitation, homecoming Sunday, all are welcome home. "She wants you there," Micah said. "She's going to fix this." Fix it? How? He didn't know. I did that. That night, a cousin added me back into a group chat named the Cross family, as if nothing had happened. By 2 in the morning, there were dozens of messages. The early ones were almost human. Then the new narrative arrived, fully dressed. She hid a child from us. Her own mother. Overnight, I went from the daughter who disappeared to the daughter who deceived. Not one message asked the man in the funeral photo's name. Grief had no cash value in that family. It didn't post to the ledger. The next evening, my mother called herself. First time in over 4 years. She was crying before I said hello. Real tears, the way rain on a stage is real. Engineered timing, honest liquid. "You could have known her since the day she was born, Mom," I said. "All you had to do was let me finish one sentence." A pause. Recalibration. Then the offer. "Come to homecoming, sweetheart. I'll tell everyone you were sick. A sick girl who couldn't reach out isn't a scandal, honey. It's a testimony. No one ever has to know about the money." That sentence did 3 things at once. It diagnosed me retroactively with love. It converted 5 years of erasure into a redemption arc with her in the lead, and it buried the money forever with my signature on the burial. She wasn't apologizing. She was offering me a better produced lie and a supporting role in it. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up and stood in my kitchen shaking. Not with fear, with recognition. 2 nights later, my grandmother Ruth called. First time in 5 years, and she said my name like it had never once been in doubt. She'd gotten my letter all those years ago, every page. She'd kept every Christmas card, hidden where hiding was necessary. "Why didn't you write back?" I asked. "Look at my hands, child," she said. "A letter leaving that house gets read at more checkpoints than a prisoner of war." I never believed the word disappeared. Not for one day. People don't disappear. They get erased. And I have sat at that woman's table 50 years, watching who holds the eraser. Then brisk again. "I'm told there's a girl at your house with my face on her. Bring her to me while these eyes still work." I decided not to go to homecoming, only to Ruth's porch, on my own terms. Drive up Friday, motel off the interstate Saturday with Ruth, wheels south Sunday morning, before church doors even opened. A good plan. It survived one afternoon. Ruth was on the porch before I'd cut the engine. Wren walked straight up the steps like they belonged to her. In the afternoon, Ruth sent her to fetch the sewing tin and dig under the thread. Every Christmas card I'd ever sent, rubber banded, kept instead of thrown away. "Why under the thread?" I asked. "Because your mother found them last Christmas looking for scissors. Read everyone. Put them back." Never said a word. 10 months. My mother had had my address for 10 months while her church prayed for her lost girl. She didn't need to find me. She needed me lost. That evening, my Aunt Paulette dropped by under the pretense of returning a casserole dish, stayed under 10 minutes, and hugged me on the way out, an inventory disguised as affection. By supper, the whole parish knew everything. And that night at the homecoming eve gathering, my mother announced, word for word, "God has brought my lost lamb home. This Sunday, my daughter will stand before this congregation, and this family will be made whole." Applause. 2 women cried. I sat on a motel bed reading that, my daughter asleep 8 feet away, and felt vertigo. I'd been written into a show I had explicitly declined that night. Micah knocked on the motel door holding a spiral notebook. "My mother's household ledger. decades of it. He'd found it that spring and had been carrying what was inside ever since. He opened it to the roof, my roof, one line, patch materials, $310, labor, Walter and Micah. My father and brother had fixed it themselves for the cost of shingles, while $1,500 a month kept leaving my account. Where the rest went was all there. Church building funds, retreat sponsorships, loans to cousins never repaid. A portfolio of people who owed her, built with my money. My anger finally stood up. Then he pointed to an entry from decades earlier. Wedding ring, pawned. Mama's back rent. My mother, 23, married 8 months. Had sold her own ring to cover her parents' debt. Nobody ever paid her back either. She's not spending your money, Elena, Micah said. She's paying a debt she thinks every daughter owes. It made nothing okay. It made everything sadder, and it took revenge off the table. Near midnight, Wren's voice came from the other bed, half inside a dream. Mommy, do I have a grandma? I lay in the dark and did not answer, and the not answering rang louder than anything I could have said. If I stayed silent, my silence wouldn't stay mine. Someday my daughter would hear that her mommy was the woman who hid, who was too ashamed to show her face. Silence had been my shelter. From here on, it would only be material. I read the cream envelope one more time. Homecoming Sunday, all are welcome home. Out loud to nobody, I said I'm going to church. I didn't bring bank statements. Those stayed 400 miles south, exactly where they belonged. Paper was my mother's language. I was done speaking it. I ironed my navy dress, braided Wren's hair, let her pick the ribbon. I put Jonas's brass key in my pocket, not for anyone to see. Ballast. I texted Micah, front pew for Grandma. He wrote back, done. And Elena, I'm glad. Riverside Grace holds about 200 people, and that Sunday it held all of them. We took the seats Micah had guarded. My father stood at the back wall, cap in his hands. After the offering, my mother took the pulpit, thanked God for seasons of sorrow that end in joy, and turned to find me. Elena, baby, come up here and give thanks with me. 200 faces turned. I looked at Ruth. She gave me a nod you'd have missed if you weren't starving for it. I stood up. I did not take the microphone. I didn't disappear, I said. I stopped paying. For 6 years. In my family, those were apparently the same thing. You could hear the ceiling fans. $92,000. That's not a figure of speech. I kept the total. Anyone here who ever borrowed from it is welcome to check my math. A few faces in the middle rows went very still. I didn't look at them long. I hadn't come for them. The year I supposedly disappeared, I buried the man I loved and delivered our daughter alone. Nobody asked. One question would have found me. I turned to my mother. I was allowed to be tired, Mom. Just never here. How dare you, she said, and the microphone rang with it. She was shaking. I wasn't. I'd been rehearsing calm since nursing school. She'd been rehearsing an audience. Only one of those skills works when the script runs out. The sanctuary split like water around a stone. Some faces went soft toward me. Some went to stone, including people I'd genuinely loved. The truth doesn't convince everyone. It just stops the lie from being unanimous. I stepped back, took my daughter's hand, and walked her to the front pew. Wren, this is your great-grandmother, Ruth. She's the reason I still believe in family. Ruth put her shaking hands on that small face, and the whole church watched a great-grandmother meet the child they'd been told was hidden from them. As I passed my mother, she said something quiet. Mic lowered, no audience. Everything I did for this family, and she believed it. That's the part that will never stop being sad. Being needed is not the same as being loved, Mom, I said. I hope one day somebody loves you for free. I walked out into October. Cold, clean, indifferent gold. Micah caught us in the parking lot, tie loose, out of breath. He didn't defend her. He just looked at his sleeping niece and asked the one thing nobody in my family had ever asked me for. Can I come see her? No envelopes. Just an Uncle Sundays, I said. Bring nothing. We were on the interstate before the potluck casseroles were uncovered. Nobody chased us. That part of the story was over. 6 weeks later, my grandmother Ruth sat on my porch in Portland, teaching Wren to thread a needle, 4 hands shaking for 2 different reasons, both cheering when the thread went through. My mother's letter came the week before. 3 pages. The word sorry appeared 0 times in any load-bearing sentence. I read it once, put it in a drawer, and made dinner. It hurt less than I'd budgeted for. She stepped back from her role at the church, citing her health. My father sent a card with 1 line in pencil. I'm sorry. I looked away. I've kept it. I haven't answered yet. Some doors take more than 1 coat, and I'm allowed to take my time now. Yesterday, Wren and I touched up the blue door together. Paint on her nose, on the dog, on the porch rail. She calls it our sky color. If you have to pay to stay in someone's story, walk out and write your own. The people who actually love you will read every page for free. That's this week's story from Hearthly Stories. If this reminded you of an envelope you keep filling for people who never ask how you're doing, that's your sign. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if someone you love needs to hear this, send it to them. Subscribe. We tell a new one every week.